What's up, gang? Coach Steve here again, and today is recovery day. So the last couple of weeks, I've kind of spent a little bit of time in recovery, kind of digging into different types of recovery. We talked about some foam rolling, percussion therapy with some of that vibration, the Hypervolt and the Viper, the vibrating foam roller, and the Sphere, and those kinds of things. So considering we've got some new folks on the group here and some new folks starting to kind of train for this 5K and 10K virtual race that we've got, I wanted to take a minute and just kind of back up a little bit and talk a little bit about just some basics. So today I want to talk a little bit about flexibility and a couple of different types of flexibility because we've touched on those, but I just wanted to go back through them as a reminder. So really, you got three main kind of types of flexibility that you will hear coaches or different programs talk about, right? You got static flexibility, you've got active flexibility, and you've got dynamic flexibility. Static flexibility, in just a real general sense, is when you're holding a stretch for 20 or 30 seconds. It's kind of what we think of when we think of, hey, I'm going to touch my toes, or I'm going to, whatever it is, I'm going to stretch my quads or my calves. Holding those, that would be a static hold, and like I said, it's typically 20, 30 seconds. Active flexibility, in a lot of cases, are real similar, if not the exact same moves. Just the main difference between active and static flexibility is you're only holding that stretch for 2 or 3 seconds, and then you're letting it, you're releasing it, and then you're doing that multiple times. So I might reach down, touch my toes, hold for 2 or 3 seconds, come back up, go back down, and go through that series a few times on the same movement. I'm just only holding it for a few seconds. And then dynamic flexibility is typically a lot more, just like it sounds, dynamic or ballistic movements that are really kind of just preparing your muscles to move dynamically. Obviously, that's kind of the name, right? So a couple of things real quick in terms of timing. There's a pretty widely accepted position by this stage in the game that static flexibility is really more of a post-workout thing. After a run, after a strength training session, you want a static flexibility, or you want to static stretch certain areas post-workout. You're not doing a ton of that pre-workout. It's just counterproductive in a lot of cases. So pre-workout, you want to look at active flexibility, or even better, dynamic flexibility in some cases. And we'll post a video after this to kind of go through some examples of what some of these different stretches are, or this different types of flexibility. But again, pre-workout or before you run, you want to look at dynamic flexibility, possibly even active flexibility. And then post-workout, you can get into some active or more importantly, some static flexibility, because you're not worried about that muscle being able to fire quickly post-workout, because we're kind of done with the workout at that point. So again, not to get too far in the weeds there, but you hear a lot of conversation around dynamic flexibility on some of these run programs associated with the 5K and 10K. You will see on your rest days or on your recovery days, you'll also see some conversation or some notes on stretching. Just know that, again, pre-workout, dynamic flexibility; post-workout, static flexibility. Active could really fall before or after, or probably even better to fall in both, right? So again, I'll post a video here in a second of some different dynamic flexibility sequences that you guys can do before you run, and then I'll also post some stuff, or I'll add some movements in there with some static flexibility and active flexibility, just so you kind of have a good reference point too. The one last thing I wanted to talk about, I wanted to touch on flexibility for sure, but I also wanted to talk a little bit about these recovery runs or recovery walks, right? Again, it's not as important whether you're walking or running, but I do think it's important the day after a really challenging workout, whether that be a long workout, a high intensity workout, a speed workout, any of those where, they're pretty darn challenging workouts, whether it's due to intensity or duration. That recovery workout or that recovery walk or run is really important. So I just want to explain to you guys why you typically see that after a challenging workout in your program. So just to explain that, intensity should still kind of hover around that 70-75%, but a lot of times it's either half or even less than half of what that long walk or long run would be. So again, make sure you're not skipping these recovery workouts. You got rest days where you're not doing anything at all and you're kind of staying off of your feet. But the recovery walks and the recovery runs are really important. So make sure you're getting those in and make sure you're focusing on flexibility as well. So as always, if you need anything, comment below or shoot me a private message. But I really look forward to continuing this journey with you guys. Hope the recovery run or walk goes well today, and hope you enjoy the stretches too. Thanks, guys. See ya. Okay, gang, we're going to talk about active and static flexibility now. So just as a reminder, the main difference is the length of time you're holding that. The movements themselves in most cases are the same. So for example, if I'm just going to do a regular kind of seated hamstring stretch, or a seated kind of touch my toes, if I'm holding that for 20-30 seconds, that's going to be a static hold, right? If I'm going to hold that for 1, 2, 3 seconds, release, come back down, 1, 2, 3 seconds, release, and do that a few times, that would be active flexibility. So I'm going to go through a few movements. Just know that if you hold it for 20 or 30 seconds, that would be a static hold, which again is appropriate for post-workout. And if you're just holding it for 2 or 3 seconds and you're doing that several times, that would be active flexibility, and that would be appropriate before or after, right? So again, I want to start with just kind of some lower body stuff. I just kind of discussed a hamstring curl there. Some people, you'll see the kind of toe touch, the standing hamstring curl, where maybe you're just kind of standing, reaching down, touching your toes. I don't necessarily love that one, especially if it's post-workout, because you just end up getting your head too low, and a lot of times you just don't want to have your head below your shoulders post-workout just because your heart's racing, and it's just not a good idea, right? So if you're going to address those hamstrings, I like the idea of just kind of a seated toe touch, and again, hold 2 or 3 seconds for active, longer than that, 20-30 seconds for static. So let's also talk a little bit about a kind of a figure 4 stretch, which is going to get a little bit of hamstring but some real good glute activity in it. So what I'm going to want to do here is I'm going to want to take one leg and I'm going to want to cross it across my knee, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay down on the ground, and I'm going to take my hands, pass them through, and just kind of clench my fingers. And you will feel this immediately. You're really getting some good kind of glute activity there. And then again, same thing. I can end up switching legs. Same thing, just kind of holding that. I think that's a really good one. And then we start talking about a quad and a hamstring, or a quad and a calf stretch, just staying with some of the basics. I think just a standing quad stretch typically is going to be the one that most people are familiar with. So if I just kind of brace myself against something, kind of grab my foot, I just want to make sure I'm standing up real tall. For most of the things I'm doing, I just always want to be conscious of my posture and everything as well. So you just want to make sure you're not getting into any of these stretches with poor posture, because you just don't want your body to kind of learn the movement, whatever you're doing. You just don't want it to learn it incorrectly, right? So kind of post up, make sure your posture is good. Get in here, and again, you're just kind of holding that for the appropriate length. And then same thing with calf. If I've got kind of a post or a wall or something like that, I want to make sure that this back leg, if I'm kind of getting my posture real good, I've just got a good calf stretch there. And then to get a little bit more of that soleus and Achilles, that back leg, I can start to bend that knee, and I'm going to start to get a lot of this down in here. So again, everything from your kind of foot and ankle complex to your upper and lower calf, soleus, gastroc, hamstrings. That's awesome. Hamstrings and quads, I think those are great. The other things I'd suggest stretching, you see some kind of standing stretches where you're doing some of this. I think these are all good. I think just shaking your arms out real good while you're running is a good one, but a pec and a lat stretch I think are great too, so I want to show you a few of those. Again, imagine you still have that same wall you were kind of posted up against before. I just want to kind of stand, I want to get my elbow about shoulder height. And I'm just kind of focused on real good posture here. And I'm just looking away. I'm going to end up getting a little bit of a neck stretch out of that as well, which I like. And then same thing the other way. So I can get a real good kind of pec stretch out of that. Sometimes we sit at our computers a lot. Even if we're at home, we sit at our computers a lot. Our shoulders get kind of pulled forward. Last thing I would say is our lats. Sometimes our lats get tight because we're like this, and you get a lot of internal rotation. So you get those rounded shoulders as well. So any kind of lat stretch, again, if you've got a wall or a base, I'd like to just kind of grab onto this, and then I'm just trying to take my weight back. I'm just trying to sit back and get a real good stretch. I can do this with two hands if I want to. I just want to make sure I'm getting a real good, if I can get lats, good chest stretch along with a neck stretch as well, some good lower body stuff. Again, depending on how long you hold those is going to distinguish active and dynamic, or active and static. And then dynamic movements will really be a different series of movements that are just a little bit more ballistic. And I'll post a video of those as well. So again, hopefully this helps a little bit. It's some kind of basic stuff. So if you have any questions, let me know. Good luck with your recovery workouts today, and hope the stretching makes you feel better. And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, guys. All right, guys, next for dynamic warm-up, we're gonna start out with some inchworms, right? Nice and easy. I'm just gonna go down to the ground. I'm gonna walk myself out to where I get into that high plank position. I'm gonna do a push-up, and then I'm gonna walk my toes back up as far as my hamstrings will let me go. And then I'm right back down, push up, walking back up. Cool? And I'm gonna go all the way down. Next thing I'm gonna do here is just some high knees. I just want you walking, knee to the chest, up on that toe, pushing those hips through, high knee, pushing those hips through. Cool? The third move we're gonna do is gonna be a lunge to rotation. I'm just gonna, hands right out in front, lunge. Whatever knee is forward, that's what direction I'm rotating. Cool? Nice and easy. Last move are gonna be these Frankensteins. I want arms out front, opposite foot, opposite hand. Make sure you're not crunching, trying to touch your toes. I don't care whether you touch your toes or not. I just want you kicking up, getting some hamstring flexibility there. And then the final thing is I'm gonna go to jump rope for 4 or 5 minutes. Again, if you don't have a jump rope, jumping jacks is fine. Just do something you can even pretend to have a jump rope and kind of go through those movements too. Cool? So I'm gonna do it with you. Here we go.